Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. All about nutrition from your favorite dietitian. Everything you need to digest in your mind. Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. Making you healthier one bite at a time. With Tony. Woo.
Hello, and welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. In this episode, I'm going to teach you how to end the binge diet cycle. You might be aware of what this looks like, or you personally have experienced it, or watched somebody else experience it, or maybe you're not sure and you're wondering if you're actually caught up in it. One thing I've spoken about before, and I'm just going to remind you if you're new to the podcast, unfortunately, disordered eating has been normalized in society. And so what I'm about to explain to you, what the diet cycle actually looks like, or that binge cycle, the over-under eating kind of model in which so many people are functioning, unfortunately, that's not normal. And I've talked about this before, how our perception of what being healthy is skewed, and we think of like six-pack abs and only eating chicken and broccoli and never enjoying nights out with having dinner with friends or having a cocktail out with a friend, going out for a date night. All of those things, they are not associated with healthy. However, as you know, my biggest goal and what I work with my clients with one-on-one is to really just get them to break up with the obsessive thoughts about dieting and recognizing that the answer is not restriction. It's actually part of the problem, and that I want them to create a better relationship with food so they can do those socializing events and feel in charge of their health. So all that to say, it's not easy to do when you live in a society where you are amongst the minority, meaning most people don't have a healthy relationship with food, and think of being quote unquote healthy or losing weight as going on a diet. It's a little bit challenging when you're trying to do the opposite. You're trying to heal your relationship with food. You're not trying to diet. And you're really just trying to find that balance in your eating habits and that confidence in yourself. So before I can kind of explain how to do that, and obviously, I'm going to give you the steps, but the work is required. I will kind of preface with that. I first need to kind of explain what the diet cycle looks like. So like I said, you might be currently experiencing this or know someone who's experiencing it. So you're probably like, I know what it looks like. And I think that you probably do, but I think it's helpful to really hear it out and to understand kind of where there are those, what I call breaks in the chain, and how you can actually make the changes within that, chain reaction. So I want to kind of share what the chain reaction looks like. And then second to that, I'm going to teach you how to break those chains inside. So how to create a different results so you can get out of that diet cycle or that binge eating cycle. Okay. So first thing that usually happens is we have a negative thought. I don't like my body. I don't like the way my clothes fit. I'm tired of not having any energy. Why can't I just get my shiitake together? Those are real negative thoughts, right? So those often come first, which then leads to a diet or a restriction, feeling like you need control and feeling like I need to do something about it. And unfortunately, most people tend to go all in instead of all out, right? All in or all out, but in this case, they go all in. They'll say, I'm not having any sugar, I'm not having any dairy, I'm not having any bread, I'm not having anything that has added sugar or anything that's fried. Everything that I eat is just going to be, I'm just going to have a salad for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Like that can be the mindset that often happens. Or we go and look for the latest and greatest diet trend that basically, looks different, but it has that underlying theme of restriction, which then leads to feeling deprived. So we don't like to feel deprived. As human beings, as mammals, our bodies want to be fed and we want to feel full and we want to feel fueled. So when we feel deprived, we often will either want something even more. So by taking things off the table, right? So not allowing for added sugar at all or any added or fried foods or anything like that. None of it whatsoever. Now we somehow want it more. It's been put on a pedestal. All right. It's telling a kid if they can't have something, one thing I wasn't allowed to have as a kid, the one thing, my mom was really great at like allowing, all foods were always available, all that stuff. The one thing I wasn't allowed to have was coffee. And now I'm literally a coffee fanatic. Like I'm obsessed with coffee. Like I'm pretty sure it's convinced because my mom told me that for so long it was only for adults and I had to wait until I felt like I had to sneak it, like I wasn't allowed to have it, right? So the more you tell someone you can't have something, the more they want it, right? So now because you haven't had it and you believe that you're not allowed to have it, you now think, okay, this is it. This is the last time I'm going to have it. So I'm going to have all of it. So if you can't resist anymore, that false belief of willpower, which does not exist. I will say that you believe like I have no willpower. So I'm just going to have it and I'm just going to go all in and I'll get back on track tomorrow or the next day, whatever it is. And that overeating can happen for a really long time because now you're resistant because in your thought processes, in order for you to get your shiitake back together, you have to go back into that restrictive deprivation type of cycle, right? So now the last part that I think is really, really important that we need to address, and I think I'm going to do an additional podcast just on this alone, is that overeating now leads to shame. We are embarrassed, upset with ourselves, we beat ourselves up, and that shame can really be so daunting. And the shame is what then leads back to more negative thoughts. And now we talked about those negative thoughts. Now go back to that diet restriction, which then you feel deprived and then you overeat, then you feel shameful, and then the negative thoughts come again. So that is the diet cycle in a nutshell. Negative thoughts, diet restriction, deprivation, overeating, shame, negative thoughts. And it repeats over and over and over and over again. So what I'm going to teach you today is how to break those chains, how to get out of the cycle. And I will remind you that it's not going to happen overnight. Committing to healthier living, healing your relationship with food, finding the balance in your eating habits, it takes time. Like I said earlier, we live in a society where disordered eating is completely normalized. So it's really hard for us to stick to something when we're constantly being bombarded by the media or by what our friends are doing, or the person at our office or our family member. All of that stuff can be really, really challenging to navigate through. So you have to continuously remind yourself that you are a work in progress and you're trying a different way. Because we've been there, right? Been there, done that. You've been in the diet cycle. It's brought you down numerous times. It's not helping you. If anything, it's only hurting you. So I need you to trust that this is going to be a better and newer way. However, it is going to take time. So you require some patience and some self-compassion along the way. All right. The first thing we need to address are the negative thoughts. Nobody ever got anywhere from beating themselves up to get there. And if they did, then those results did not stay. I'm challenging you to switch your negative thoughts to positive ones and not just one for one. If you have a negative thought, I need you to create 2 positive thoughts. So for example, I hate my body. I need to lose weight so my belly goes away. I want you to replace that to my body helps me function every single day. And although it might be a little bigger than I want it to be, it is able to walk and run and digest my food. This belly carried my baby if you're a mother, right? So think of the positive things. So for every one negative thought, I want you to replace that with 2 positive thoughts. And then I want you to think about not that you want to lose weight so you no longer are tired or you no longer have this belly. I want you to think of, I want to lose this weight because I want to have energy. I want to feel confident in my clothes again. So you see the difference? You're saying the same thing, but one is more negative and it's not really motivating. It makes you feel like crap. It doesn't make you want to make any change. But the other one is really uplifting and it really is, encouraging to have you create a change for the better. So it's focused on positive stuff, not negative stuff. Okay, so that's one way to break the chain, because as you think positively, then you're not going to be thinking, you're less likely to think of what you have to restrict. You're more likely going to start thinking about what you can add in. So that leads to the next thing. So we have the negative thoughts. You're going to replace that with positive self-talk. And then instead of focusing on your diet and what you need to restrict, I want you to focus on what you can add in. So examples, more water, more fruits and vegetables, more lean proteins, more whole grains, right? Think about, or even too, like healthy alternatives. So leading to the next one. So focusing on what you can add in, and then maybe you can add in something like a chocolate covered strawberry at the end of the night to maybe replace your ice cream that you usually have, right? Or you decide the next step, which is usually deprivation, which means you're restricting, you're not allowing any sugar, any ice cream, any candy, any cookies, none of that stuff. You rather say, you know what, if I really, really want it, then I'm going to allow for just smaller portions of it. So it's acceptable, I'm allowed to have it, but there's no reason why I need to overeat on it. Because anytime I overeat on it, I don't really feel well. And like I said, I want to feel good and I want to feel energized. So instead of depriving yourself, allow for smaller portions of those indulgent choices. Okay. And just by doing that alone, focusing on what you can add in, allowing for those smaller portions of the more indulgent things, you're going to be less likely to overeat. But say it doesn't work, right? Say you get caught up in the moment, you're out with friends, and maybe your intentions were great, but you somehow overate. Now, the next step, rather than feeling shameful, which that usually leads to, is to really just recognize how it happened and why. Take responsibility of it and then adjust accordingly. So if you overate because maybe, you got caught up with friends, but also maybe you forgot to eat lunch. So once again, going back to adding in, very often when I work with my clients, I actually I'm working them up to eating 3 meals a day, because many of my clients struggle with that over-under eating and a history of disordered eating and binge eating disorder. So if they feel that restriction and they feel that deprivation, it's going to lead to overeating. So instead, one thing we work on is adding in more meals throughout the day, so they never feel like that point of hunger, which leads to anxiety, which then leads to overeating, right? So once you recognize that you overate, take a look at why that happened. Maybe it's not related to the diet itself. Maybe you did eat 3 meals a day, you haven't been depriving yourself, but maybe it's strictly emotional. Maybe it was the way someone said something. Maybe they commented on your outfit. Maybe they even complimented you and told you that you're looking really good. And that's like a whole other conversation of how to handle compliments from others. But all that to say that there could be a lot of reasons why we subconsciously self-sabotage or make choices that we didn't even intend to do, but just maybe the energy of the room kind of led to that overeating. So lastly, I will say that usually leads to that shame, but I need you to replace the shame. Shame is something that we feel. The reason why we feel shame is because we think that we're alone and that nobody else is going through it. And we're kind of embarrassed to have had that challenge or to have not been able to resist the temptation or whatever it is. And it's really unfortunate, because here I am telling you and teaching you about shame and saying that shame is usually stemmed from feeling like you are alone and you're the only one. But as I just shared with you, many of my clients, and then myself included in the past, have dealt with this, and we are not alone. We are very much not alone. Like I was saying before, there's a lot of people who struggle with disordered eating, and some are aware of it and some are not. But a majority of our society, unfortunately, living in America, or even honestly, even outside of America, wherever you're listening to this from, in most developed countries, this is something that comes up a lot. Body shame, food shame, all of that stuff. And the only really way to overcome that is to just forgive yourself for being human and to recognize that it is normal, and that it's okay, and that you're trying, and be proud of yourself for that. So that way you trying again to break the diet cycle. But this time, instead of that shame leading to negative thoughts, it leads to positive thoughts. Okay? So I'm going to wrap this up by giving you an example of how to stay out of the diet cycle by just repeating the ways that we broke the chains. So we're going to think positively, replace any negative thoughts with positive self-talk. Rather than dieting or restricting our intake, we're going to focus on what we can add in rather than take away. Instead of depriving our bodies for the things that it's craving, like sweets and salt and sugar and fat and all of those things that we want to limit, instead of not allowing for any of it, we're going to allow for smaller portions of it. Okay, so instead of beating ourselves up for overeating, we're going to recognize how it happened and why, and then adjust accordingly. And then instead of feeling shameful, we're going to forgive ourselves. Forgive yourself for being human and try again. Okay, so positive self-talk, focus on what you can add in, allow for smaller portions of indulgent choices, recognize how and why the overeating is happening, and then adjust accordingly. And then replace shame with forgiveness and self-compassion and try again. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please share it on your story. Tag me at tips_with_Tony. Let me know what your biggest takeaways were. If you're not already subscribed to the podcast, please subscribe. It allows other people to find it, but more importantly, it notifies you when a new episode comes out every Monday and every Wednesday. As always, thank you so much for listening. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.